Close your eyes for a moment. Picture a freezing January morning in suburban Birmingham, 1984. You slide into the driver's seat, and the vinyl is so cold it almost burns through your trousers. Your breath hangs in the air. You reach for a small knob on the dashboard, pull it towards you, and turn the key. The engine coughs, catches, and slowly comes alive. That knob was called a choke. And if you know exactly what it felt like to pull one, this video was made for you. British cars in the 1980s had features that would leave anyone under 40 completely baffled today. 15 of them to be exact. Some were ingenious, some were baffling, and some were just beautiful in a way that modern cars have completely forgotten. And wait until we get to number 3. A British family car that actually spoke to you out loud. And most owners wished it would stop. Welcome back to the channel. If this is your first time here, we take you back to the Britain you remember, the one that shaped who you are. Hit subscribe and tell us in the comments which car you were driving in 1985. You might be surprised how many of us shared the same road. Number 15. The manual choke. Before you turned the key on a cold morning, you reached for a small round knob mounted on the dashboard. You pulled it out an inch or two and held your breath. This enriched the fuel and air mixture flowing into the carburetor so a freezing engine could fire up. Pull it too far and the engine flooded. Not far enough and it stalled. Every car had its own personality. A 1982 Austin Metro needed a firm half-inch pull. A Ford Escort Mark III wanted a gentle quarter-inch and a moment of patience. You learned your car the way you learned a friend. Its moods on wet mornings, its stubbornness after sitting in the cold all weekend. The last classic Minis still carried manual chokes right up until 1991 when fuel injection finally arrived. But for millions of British drivers through the 80s, the morning choke pull was as routine as boiling the kettle. It was not a flaw, it was a conversation between you and your engine. And when it disappeared, mornings never felt quite the same. The choke was only the beginning. The 80s put you physically in touch with every part of your car, especially when you wanted some fresh air. Number 14. The manual window winder. A small chrome handle mounted low on the door panel. You gripped it, turned it clockwise, and the window descended with a smooth mechanical whir. No motors, no switches, no delay, just your arm and a direct connection to the glass. The beauty of it was control. You could crack the window open by exactly the width you wanted. A centimeter for a whisper of air. 3 inches for a proper breeze on the M6. Try doing that with an electric window today. It jumps past the sweet spot every time. Power windows were strictly for the top trim. The Ford Cortina Ghia had them. The Granada too. But 90% of Britain was still cranking by hand. And the sound of 4 family members winding their windows down simultaneously as the car pulled into the Butlins car park was a symphony of summer. Today, fewer than 8% of new UK cars offer any manual window option. That chrome handle is gone. And so is the control it gave you. Now something even more specific. Something you might not have thought about in 30 years. But the second you hear it described, you will remember it perfectly. Number 13. Quarter light vent windows. Those small triangular panes of glass at the front corner of each door. They did not roll down. They pivoted. A tiny chrome latch held them shut, and when you flicked it and pushed the glass outward, a narrow stream of cool air flowed directly onto your face. No roar, no buffeting. Just a clean, quiet breeze that made a summer drive down the A30 completely bearable without any air conditioning at all. And this mattered because in 80s Britain, air conditioning in a family car simply did not exist. The Ford Sierra did not offer it. The Vauxhall Cavalier did not offer it. Even the Rover 800 did not get climate control until 1988. Quarter lights were how you survived July. Insurance companies pushed for their removal because thieves could pop them open with a bent coat hanger in seconds. By the mid-80s, most manufacturers had sealed them shut. But anyone who remembers driving through the Cotswolds with that little triangle cracked open knows that nothing since has ever come close. If you think a pivoting window was clever engineering, wait until you see what sat under the boot carpet. It tells you everything about how Britain used to think. Number 12. The full-size spare wheel. Lift the carpet in the boot of any 80s British car, and there it sat. A matching wheel with a proper tyre, bolted down beside a scissor jack and a wheel brace. If you got a puncture on the hard shoulder of the M1, you changed it yourself. Dad taught you on a Sunday afternoon in the driveway. My left hand loosens, my right hand tightens. Keep the car in gear. Chock the opposite wheel with a brick. It was not just a spare tyre. It was a complete toolkit for self-reliance. Today, only around 8% of new British cars come with a full-size spare as standard. Most offer a can of sealant foam and a prayer. The RAC reported a 32% increase in tyre-related call-outs since manufacturers began removing spare wheels to save weight. The spare wheel was not just practical. It was a philosophy. Your car trusted you to handle it. Now, even further back in engineering, to a feature so old-fashioned it feels almost fictional. Number 11. The starting handle hole. Look closely at the front of an early 80s Austin Metro or a late model Morris Ittle and you would find a small round opening just below the grille. That was the starting handle hole, a provision for inserting a hand crank to physically turn the engine over if the battery died. Most owners never even noticed it was there, but British Leyland kept including it on certain models well into 1983, a microchip under the bonnet and a hole in the bumper that said, "If all else fails, you can still do this the old way." By 85, they were gone entirely. But for a brief window, British cars straddled 2 centuries of engineering at once. Now we move inside. And this is where the 80s car really becomes a world of its own. A space with its own smells, sounds and furniture that no modern interior can replicate. Number 10. Ashtrays in every door. Open the door of a 1983 Ford Cortina, and built into the panel was a small chrome-lidded ashtray. Front left, front right, rear left, rear right. The dashboard had one too. 5 ashtrays in a single-family car. Britain in the 80s assumed everybody smoked. The little flip lids made a satisfying click when you opened them. Even if nobody in your family touched a cigarette, those ashtrays had a second life. They held 10-pence pieces for the parking meter. Throat lozenges rattled around in the rear ones. Sweet wrappers got stuffed in and forgotten. Dad kept his spare house key in the one behind the gear stick. By 2005, fewer than 15% of new UK cars included a factory-fitted ashtray. Those little chrome lids closed for the last time, and the car door never felt quite as furnished again. Speaking of things that glowed in the dark, every child of the 80s remembers this next one vividly, and probably still has the scar to prove it. Number 9. The cigarette lighter. A round chrome cylinder pushed into a socket on the dashboard. You pressed it in, waited 5 seconds, and it popped back out with a click. The coiled element inside glowed bright orange, hot enough to burn skin in an instant. Every parent in Britain told their child never to touch it. Every child in Britain touched it exactly once. That tiny forbidden appliance sat right there in the dashboard, inches from the radio, with no lock, no guard, and no child-proofing of any kind. It was terrifying and fascinating in equal measure. The 12-volt socket survived the lighter itself, and today charges phones and powers sat-navs. But that spring-loaded pop of a red-hot coil appearing from the dash was a piece of theatre that belonged to a very different era. Now from fire to sound, from something dangerous to something deeply personal. This next feature changed the way a generation experienced music. Number 8. The in-car cassette player. The clunk of a TDK C90 sliding into the slot. The half-second of hiss before the music began. And then your world changed. Auto-reverse was the luxury feature of the decade. The tape flipped itself at the end of side 1 without you having to eject it while doing 70 on the M4. Mixtapes recorded off Radio 1 on Sunday evenings. Labels written in biro. Titles abbreviated to fit the narrow strip. Side A was the upbeat song for the outward journey. Side B was the slower one for coming home. And when the tape got chewed, you performed surgery with a pencil, winding the ribbon back in with the patience of a watchmaker. That warm, slightly muffled sound had a character digital has never matched. Cassette sales in the UK peaked at 83 million units in 1989. By 2023, they sold just 200,000. But if you remember the exact moment your favorite song came on after 3 hours of motorway driving, you know that no algorithm will ever replicate what a handmade mixtape felt like. And if you think a cassette player stirred emotions, wait until you hear about number 1. It tried to do the same thing with light. Number 7. The vinyl roof. A layer of padded textured material glued over the steel roof of an ordinary saloon car. Ford Cortinas had them. Vauxhall Cavaliers offered them. Even some Princess models wore one. A vinyl roof meant you had ticked the extras box, chosen the executive trim. I wanted the neighbours to notice. On a 1981 Cortina Crusader in metallic bronze, a brown vinyl roof made you feel like you were driving something continental, something with ambitions. But water pooled underneath and rotted the steel beneath. Sunshine cracked the surface into alligator skin. And removing one meant a heat gun, a scraper, and language your grandmother would not have approved of. By 85, the vinyl roof was fading fast. But for a golden stretch in the early 80s, nothing said arrived quite like a padded roof on a company car parked outside a semi-detached in Solihull. Number 6. The heated rear window with visible element wires. Those thin amber-colored lines running horizontally across the back glass. You could see them. You could feel the slight ridges with your finger. On a frozen December morning in Sheffield, you watched the ice melt in neat parallel strips, one line at a time, from the bottom upward. Some manufacturers charged extra for it. The technology was completely visible, completely honest. No software, no sensors, just thin wires getting hot. And if one element burned out, you earned a permanent foggy stripe across your rear view that no amount of cloth could clear. Today, every car has a heated rear window and nobody thinks twice. In 1984, watching frost disappear in tidy orange lines felt like witnessing a small miracle. Now we enter the top 5. This is where British carmakers reached for the future, sometimes brilliantly, sometimes disastrously. But every attempt left a mark that drivers still talk about. Number 5. Pop-up headlights. The Lotus Esprit, the Triumph TR7, the Reliant Scimitar SS1. Flick the switch, and the sealed units rose from the bonnet like the car was waking up from a nap. Every child who saw it thought it was the greatest piece of engineering ever created. And they were not entirely wrong. Pop-ups gave low-slung sports cars a cleaner nose by day and a dramatic reveal at night. But one motor would fail, and the car cruised along, winking at oncoming traffic like a cheeky uncle at a wedding. Pedestrian safety regulations killed them in the late 90s. The last production car with pop-ups was the Lotus Esprit in 2004. Over 200,000 classic car enthusiasts online list them as the single feature they miss most from the era. When a white Esprit raised its eyes on a wet Norfolk B road, it looked like something from another planet. Number 4. The Ford Sierra Jelly Mold. In October 1982, Ford replaced the best-selling Cortina with a car that made Britain physically recoil. The Sierra. Where were the straight lines? Why was everything round? The press called it the jelly mold. Dealers could not shift them. Families clung to their old Cortinas out of loyalty and spite. Ford spent tens of millions arguing that a drag coefficient of 0.34 meant better fuel economy. Britain did not care about drag coefficients. Britain wanted a car that looked like a car. But the Sierra was right. By 88, every new car on British roads was smooth and curved. And the RS Cosworth version, with its enormous whale-tail rear spoiler, became one of the most desired performance cars in British motoring history. The Jelly Mold was ahead of its time. Time caught up. Number 3. Here it is. The one we teased at the very beginning, the talking dashboard. In March 1983, Austin Rover launched the Maestro. The MG and Vanden Plas versions came fitted with a voice synthesizer, 32 words, 15 languages, voiced by New Zealand actress Nicolette Mackenzie, who had appeared in BBC dramas including Van der Valk and General Hospital. The system warned you about low fuel, unfastened seatbelts, lights left on. It felt like Knight Rider had landed at the Cowley Assembly Plant in Oxford. BBC Tomorrow's World dedicated a segment to demonstrating it. Channel 4's Brookside wrote a full storyline around it. But the system glitched relentlessly. One couple reported their Maestro Vanden Plas insisted the battery was flat when it was perfectly fine, nagged about seatbelts already fastened. An AA inspection of their 6-month-old car found nearly 30 separate faults. By 1986, the voice was quietly killed off and replaced with conventional instruments from Montego. For 3 extraordinary years, a British family hatchback priced under £7,000 tried to have a conversation with its driver, and the driver begged it to stop. Today, only around 116 Austin Maestros remain registered on British roads. The voice is almost silent forever. Number 2. Body-colored plastic bumpers. Before the 80s, bumpers were chrome, heavy strips of shining metal bolted to the front and rear, designed to take a knock and survive. Then the Maestro arrived with bumpers molded from Bayer Pocan plastic and painted to match the body color. The Sierra followed. The Cavalier, too. The look was cleaner, more modern, more European. But a 3-mile-per-hour nudge in the Tesco car park cracked the plastic clean through. Chrome bounced back. Plastic crumbled. And because the bumpers were color-matched, a replacement had to be sprayed to the exact shade. Despite the fragility, body-colored bumpers changed how Britain thought about cars. No longer machines with armor. Designed objects. Sleek, coordinated, and quietly terrified of bollards. And now number 1. The feature that tried to turn every British car into a spacecraft, and for a few glorious years almost succeeded. Digital dashboards. The Maestro had one. The Jaguar XJ40 had one, that road testers said looked like an early 1970s calculator. The Rover SD1 Vitesse glowed with green vacuum fluorescent digits. Speed displayed in blocky numerals. Fuel levels rendered as rising bar graphs. Tachometers replaced by climbing columns of light. At night, the effect was extraordinary. The dashboard became a cockpit. Every journey down the M25 felt like a mission briefing. The Jaguar XJ40, launched in 1986, paired its digital instruments with the famous J-Gate automatic selector and an interior that smelled of Connolly leather and engineering ambition. But the technology was fragile. LCD segments died, displays flickered, digits faded to ghosts, and drivers discovered that reading a number took longer than glancing at a needle. By the early 90s, analog dials came back. White needles on black faces. Reliable, instant, timeless. But in that moment, sitting alone in the dark with the green glow of your speed washing across the inside of the windscreen, you were living in the future, and the future was British. The 1980s were not just a decade. They were a way of driving that felt personal, physical, and completely real. No touchscreens, no parking sensors, no cameras telling you what was behind you. Just your hands on the wheel, your ears on the engine, and a small chrome knob on the dashboard that asked you to pay attention before you even turned the key. These features were not flaws. They were characters. Cars today are safer, faster, cleaner. But they never surprise you at 7:30 on a January morning when the engine catches on the third try, and you think to yourself, there she goes. Which of these 15 do you remember best? Tell us in the comments. If you knew what a quarter light was without being told, you are one of us. Hit subscribe. Share this with someone who still remembers the sound of a cassette rewinding on the M4. And we will see you on the next trip down the road.